du monde, en bas de votre écran. Si tenéis necesidad de la traducción, por favor, escoged.
If you need translation, please select the language that you need.
So
again, if you need translation, at the bottom of your screen, you will find an icon with a globe.
The PowerPoints for today, for the ones who just arrived now.
But send also the English, Paola.
Yeah, I'm sending all of them. Didn't I send it all?
No,
Spanish, French, Italian.
Sorry,
English is missing.
Okay, I shall send everything if I'm able to do it. English, Spanish, French, and Italian. There they go. The English doesn't want to go. I'm afraid.
Because it's open.
Is it? Oh, okay. Thank you for that insight. Okay, let's close this and let's send again the English. Now, so on the chart, thank you, Kelly. On the chart, you have the 4 translations for today. Some of them I done with the numbers that are online from the Vatican site with the canon law. The French version is not yet updated on the site, on the Vatican site. So bear in mind, it's an automatic translation. So I think we can start. We will have today 2 PowerPoints at the same time. And so when it comes to the moment, we'll tell you how we're going to do it so that you can choose either in English or in Spanish. So you'll need to choose the PowerPoint that suits you better. We'll try with 2 for today, because if we put the 4 of them, I think it's going to be too complex for us and for you. So yesterday it was a really beautiful and deep presentation from Kelly. I think it was very useful. All these realities of canon law that sometimes we know, sometimes we forget, sometimes we don't know. And they're very important to our life, and mainly to the life of the leadership councils who need all the time to make decisions, discernments, to try to love as better as they can the sisters that are entrusted to their discernment. And for that, canon law helps us. I had a teacher of canon law that he would say, canon law is there to teach us and to tell us how to love when we don't know exactly what to do. So it's not something cold, it's not something that it's just lost to apply without discernment. It's to help us understand the gospel, to help us love in the best way we can, because life, it's very complex. So Kelly, thank you so much for yesterday, and thank you again for today and your travelings. We can see that you're not at home. Thank you so much. I'm aware that we've gathered all the questions that popped up yesterday. Kelly has read them. And today we're going to look at the news, at the new things Pope Francis has given us to consecrated life in canon law that affect as well our lives. Kelly, I think we're going to ask you to give the first words, and then when we start sharing, we'll need to tell the sisters how to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's good to be back with you today. I enjoyed yesterday very much, and I hope you found it beneficial to your ministry. So when I'm not speaking, I will try to mute my microphone so that you don't have too much background noise. I did find a nice quiet spot. Hopefully it won't be too distracting to us. But I look forward to addressing some of the questions and some of the areas that arose yesterday, as well as the points of changes, which are very few, that we'll address today. In your questions, there were a couple of questions that are actually very particular cases and not really related to the topic for the whole group. So I will ask Sister Paula to share some contact information or make it available through UISG. I hesitate to put it up on the chat. I am terrible at emails as it is. And if 600 people have my email address, I'll die. So I'm happy to help as much as I can, but know that Frank Morrissey ruined us all by answering emails within 5 minutes. I take a bit longer than that. So I do receive your questions and I will respond, I promise. It just may take a bit longer. Let me know if it's something urgent and pressing and I'll do my best. But so I do recognize there were some questions that really you would benefit from a conversation rather than something in a large group, okay? So we can begin. So as Paula mentioned, if you go up to the top of your screen and it says you are viewing, and you can choose options. Right now, I see Spanish and French. Will we be able to have the English? Follow you. Okay, hang on.
I was sharing it and now I'm sharing it again. So I hope it appears.
Okay, I'm choosing. There we are. I
Yes,
found you.
it's working. It's Paula.
Yep.
Paula is in English.
Yes, it didn't show up the first time, but I have it now. That will help me. Thank you.
So Kelly, if you can just repeat again for the sisters so that they can choose.
Okay, yes, at the top of your screen, if you move your mouse, you'll see the little green bar that says you are viewing, and it tells you which screen you're viewing. And next to that, you choose view options. And in the second box, under view options, it says shared screens. So you can choose Sophie. You can choose Spanish. You can choose French. You can choose Paula. Ooh la la.
Which is English.
We have now 7 shared screens to choose from. I'm not sure that that's what we want to do.
No, probably some people.
And now it's all gone.
Okay, so let's do something here. Host only.
Oh no, sorry, I stop it because people were sharing instead of using. No, go Paula, go to English. Punto, go to English.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have on our screen the English, and you have from the chat, you can follow it on your
Because
own.
I have to put mid cost.
Yeah.
Okay, Kelly, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we're going to look at just a few of the changes that Pope Francis has made with regard to things that affect our life in consecrated life. So we can go to the first slide. Okay.
Sorry.
No, I now have Sister Luigi's.
Paula, it's my foot. It's my foot. Please, can you do it again? Paula,
Yes,
it's my foot. It's my foot.
Right.
It's my foot.
But you need to stop your sharing.
Yes, it's fine. Okay. No, it's somebody who did it. Okay, so we cannot do it when we are so many people.
Okay, done. So Kelly. I hope this
Okay.
is now.
Yes, very good.
Because people share.
So this is one of the things, and I want you to know in the slides of the PowerPoint, the reference at the bottom where it gives what document the changes were announced. In the English, at least, there's a link to that document, to the original document. I'm going in the order of the canon. So this is the first canon that we are dealing with in our subject matter. And I'm sure you might have heard of this already, this change. With the consent of the council, the supreme moderator, for a grave cause, can grant an indult of exclaustration to a member professed by perpetual vows, but not for more than 5 years. And if it concerns a cleric, with the prior consent of the ordinary of the place in which he must reside. To extend an indult or to grant it for more than 5 years is reserved to the Holy See or to the diocesan bishop if it concerns institutes of diocesan right. So the change here is, it used to be 3 years, and you may have in your proper law 3 years. But Pope Francis has extended it for 5 years. Now, just to be honest, I don't find that more years is helpful. I think that it's not a good thing to just let this go indefinitely. I think it's a good idea to help people decide. Now, if somebody is on exclaustration because they're founding a new institute, or if they are doing a project that requires exclaustration, or if you're using the tool of exclaustration for someone who is absent for other reasons. Some communities, somebody's on exclaustration because they're caring for an ailing parent. I saw the presentation that Sister Sharon Ewart gave, and that was a question that came up often. And I think we could probably have a whole conference on exclaustration. So maybe, I know in her second element, we will talk about that some more. Can we go back, Paula? So 5 years is the extension. But I want you to note also that 2 things. Exclaustration is a favor, okay? It is a grant. The members have the right to ask for exclaustration. They do not have the right to be granted exclaustration, okay? It is a favor because this person has made a commitment, has vowed for her whole life to live the life according to the constitutions. Exclaustration, she asks for the favor to be dispensed from some of those things that she has committed to. The question is, do you do it 1 year at a time? Do you do it for 5 years at a shot? I want to be clear that this is 5 years, but not for more than 5 years, not 5 years at a time, but 5 years in the course of your religious life. Some people will take their 3 years of exclaustration, they'll come back for 6 months, a year, and then they'll ask for another 3 years. No. This is cumulative, not only consecutive. That's it. That's my interpretation of it, and I will die on that mountain because the person, the member, has made this commitment to live the evangelical counsels according to the constitutions of this institute. They have asked to live that. And they have been given that, and they have made this covenant to do so. So if it is something that they cannot live, or they don't want to live, then they either need to leave or to respond fully to as much as they can to the desire to live according to the constitutions. Okay. So when I first read that the extension was up to 5 years, I said, well, I wasn't consulted on that one, because sometimes it just prolongs the inevitable, and it's not helpful. We know we've had members that we want to help the sister decide, or we sit there and we wait. Well, eventually she'll realize that this isn't a good fit, and she'll ask to leave. She'll ask to leave. She never asks to leave. Okay. So if I recommend, as I said, we could have a whole webinar on exclaustration, but I would recommend, when somebody asks for exclaustration, that they give the motivation and what they hope to achieve during this time of exclaustration. If they're asking for 1 year, for 2 years, I wouldn't do more than 2 years at a time unless there's a very specific plan to use those years. But it gives you then what they hope to achieve, how they hope to achieve this during their time away. And then you have a point of evaluation. Did the tool of exclaustration serve the purpose that the sister was asked for it to achieve? And if it does not, then you don't renew it. And if it does fulfill its goal and the person needs more time, but they're working at it, that gives you a bit more comfort to continue using the tool of this favor. Okay, we can move on. Okay, the next canon is that during the time of temporary profession, a person who asks to leave the institute for a grave cause can obtain an indult of departure from the supreme moderator with the consent of the council. So the difference here is, before, even in temporary profession, to leave before the expiration of the vows, if I remember correctly, it was that it still had to go to the Holy See for the indult of departure. Now it's within the rights of the supreme moderator, with the consent of council, can grant this indult. So the person can leave freed from any obligations of whatever time remained of their temporary vows. Okay? Nice and easy. Okay, this one has gotten a lot of publicity. It's been around since 2019. But it's still not clear how we have the implementation. I'll be honest with you on that. So this is to say that a religious must be held as ipso facto dismissed from an institute. So automatically dismissed. And there are other points that have always been there, have notoriously defected from the faith, have attempted marriage, things like that. This one has been illegitimately absent from the religious house, according to Canon 665, for 12 consecutive months, taking into account that the location of the religious may be unknown. And this was put in because before that, the dismissal process, you had to give warnings. But if you don't know where the member is, how can you execute the warnings? So if we have this possibility to declare it, they have dismissed themselves by their illegitimate absence. And so now the general administration can declare this dismissal and then send it on to the Holy See for confirmation. Okay. In the first interpretation of this, there was advice or direction given for how to do it that came from the dicastery. And in this advice, they took into consideration only the case of the person being, their location being unknown. But I think that has been withdrawn because it's not complete. So if the person is unknown, how are we declaring that their location is unknown? They give us tools, but they didn't take into consideration that voluntary absence. And just even with the warnings, you could do the warnings, but if the person has just declared themselves, no, I'm not doing it, not coming back, that you can declare it. Okay. It was put in place to help congregations who had to, clean up their books, so to speak. People that have been missing and absent, but they're still considered listed as members. And so if they were to do something unbecoming of a religious, we might want them to be no longer considered a member of our institute. So it was a good move that Pope Francis initiated. It's just the details of how we're going to put this into practice is still in the experimental phase. But if you have a situation, I would encourage you to use this innovation of the canon. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, this one, I haven't been able to find what the change is. But so a member must be dismissed for the offenses mentioned in the canons, and it talks about committing the crime of murder, kidnapping, abortion, things of that nature, penalties. So 2 of the 3 canons mentioned, if the superior decides, I think before it was only 1 of them, but now 2 of the canons, if the superior decides that dismissal is not absolutely necessary and that sufficient provision can be made in some other way for the amendment of the member and the restoration of justice and the reparation of scandal. Now, I think this has come about because, okay, the crime of sexual abuse of a minor or any other kind of issue in that realm. And if it was, they must be dismissed. Some congregations have said, but we're putting the individual and the faithful more at risk because they will no longer have any kind of supervision. So if the congregation sees to it that the provision can be made in some other way to restore justice, amend the member, and repair the scandal, then that would be the preferred manner. But it's the superior that judges. Yes, Pia. Pia has a question.
It seems that Pia has lowered her hand.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so I believe that that's it. Okay. Now Canon 700. This also, there's two things that happened here. A decree of dismissal issued in the case of a professed member takes effect from the time that it is communicated to the member concerned. To be valid, however, the decree must indicate the right which the dismissed possesses to make recourse to the competent authority within 30 days from receiving notification, without the need to petition for the petition in Canon 1743. And recourse has suspensive effect. So previously, the decree of dismissal had to be confirmed by the Dicastery for Consecrated Life before it was communicated to the member. Now, the resource that I was using was holding to the authentic interpretation that I noted in the final note here from 1986, that the decree of dismissal may only be notified after its confirmation by the Holy See. That has been changed now, so that when the process of dismissal, which is a detailed process, another whole webinar, when you have arrived at the declaration of dismissal, the change is that you can communicate it directly without the confirmation of the Holy See to the member, and that it is effective immediately upon notification. However, to be valid, you must say you are now dismissed from the Institute. You have the right to appeal the decision within 30 days without the need for the petition. Now, the petition in 1743 said that first you had to ask the person who wrote the decree, you have to write to them and say, I ask you to change your mind. So Pope Francis is saying now we don't have to go straight to the Superior General to say, please don't dismiss me. And then the Superior writes back or doesn't answer. And then I can appeal to the Congregation for Religious. So upon the notification of dismissal, I have 30 days to contact the Holy See, the Dicastery for Consecrated Life, and appeal this. And I notify my superior that I am taking recourse against this decree so that I stay a member until it is decided by the next authority. Okay, I'm going to look at questions because I saw a few popping up.
The first question that came up, Kelly, thank you so much for what you've said to us today, is the reality between, yesterday you said that our own proper law, or at least that's what some sisters understood, has more power than the universal law. So one of the sisters says that from the dicastery she got the idea that canon law, it's stronger than the proper law. I think that's what I understood from the question.
sorry, with regard to the exclaustration question, if I have in my proper law that in regard to cases of exclaustration, transfer, and dismissal, we follow the norms of the universal law, then any of these changes, not a problem. If we've put into our proper law that the Superior General may grant exclaustration for up to 3 years, and then after that, it needs to be submitted for an extension to the Holy See. Nobody has communicated to me anyway that there's an automatic extension if you want to make that appeal. The member on exclaustration will probably come to you and say, see, now you can do it for 5 years instead of 3. Give me an extension. Again, it's a favor. You can choose to say, our constitutions say 3 years and we wish to abide by the 3 years. If you want an extension, you may ask beyond what we are willing to give, which is really what it comes down to. It's not that the universal law is stronger than the proper law. It's that when changes are made, how it impacts our proper law. So we've got that piece that stays together. We have what we've committed to, what we've put in our proper law. But when there's changes in the universal law, how do we want to engage with that as it relates to us? We don't have anywhere in our proper law that after 12 months of unlawful absence, we'll declare the person dismissed. That because it wasn't there before, but now we have that authority through the favor of the church in the changes that have been made. Okay.
Kelly, one of the sisters asks if you can explain again Canon 688. I can put it back on the screen because she would like you to explain it again. So 686, let me just do the showing.
86 or 88?
88, sorry.
88, okay.
Where is the
That
showing?
is about granting an indult of departure for a temporary professed. So it's just to say that it does not have to be confirmed by the Holy See. However, if it's an autonomous monastery, the bishop must confirm it. So somebody in temporary vows, because some congregations make temporary vows for 3 years at a time. So when we say, you know, after first 9 months of living as a temporary professed sister, she discerns, this is not my call. I would like to leave. Are we going to sit there and say, well, you made a commitment for 3 years, you have to honor it. You're going to have a miserable person. She could be destructive in the community. So it's to say that you don't have to petition the Holy See for this grant to let the person leave free from all obligations associated with vows, with the evangelical councils and the rights and obligations associated with membership. So now it is something that the Superior General can grant. Yes, just a detail, when I say universal law, I'm referring to the Code of Canon Law. The Code of Canon Law is the universal law for the whole church. The proper law is proper to us. Those things, our constitutions, our secondary books, our handbooks, our guidelines. That's our proper law. Particular law refers to laws within the diocese. So just a little detail. Okay, what else?
Okay, thank you. There's one here in French that says, what does the canon law say about the finance dependence of a sister that is in an absence situation? She's absent with permission. Does she have to do a budget? Does she have to give her accountancy?
If it's absent with permission, then there are two different kinds of permission of absence. Okay. It's either you're absent because you're studying or you're carrying out an apostolate or for reasons of health. A permission of absence, your status as a member does not change whatsoever. You are still a full member. So you decide how they live that out. That was one of those questions that came up that maybe we can communicate directly, because again, that's not about the role of the council, which is our topic for discussion, okay?
Okay. So some of the questions go around again, the reality of the sisters that are not in community, they disappeared, they don't make themselves available. Can you explain a little bit more on that procedure? What can be done? I'm aware that you said that it's there, but it's an experimental phase, but some of the questions go in that direction.
Yeah, no, we because the topic is so precise, I don't think that that's our topic for today, because our topic for these 2 days is about the role of the General Councillor. And this is about problem solving. And I understand that, and it is very necessary. And perhaps we can plan something with regard to issues of separation for teams. But I know that Sister Sharon Ewart in her next piece is going to talk about some of these topics. So for our purposes, we're talking about the role of the General Councillor, okay? Absolutely, I know these questions surface because of the canons that we touched, but that was just to make you aware of the changes in the canons. How you're going to implement and live these challenging tasks of gathering your members, that comes back to how you work together and how you're going to lead the congregation. Okay. So the how to, is that all right, Paula? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that because the canons touch other points as well. So I think that's why the sisters are asking these questions, because probably affects as well the way they do their work on a daily basis.
One of the things that I love about canon law is that each person encounters the law directly. So I can't tell you what to do in case of A, B, or C, because we're dealing with people. Okay, so it's that encounter with the individual and her particular scenario and how you will respond to that according to your charism and how you live your call to consecrated life within your institute and what that call is. There's no one answer. And so that's the gift of canon law, but it's also the challenge. So to have a conversation of that magnitude in a group so large, I don't know that it would benefit everybody.
I think that's the deep understanding of canon law. Sometimes we'd like to have things, okay, this is the way to do it, done. But actually canon law doesn't take away the discernment, the application and the understanding of the law. Something that is very simple, when a congregation is approved in the diocese, so to whom does the council have to relate? Is it to the bishop whenever there are these cases of confirmation or asking for permissions?
If it's a diocesan institute, yes. Yeah, that is the competent authority. One question that is simple, can we send the dismissal decree to the family of the sister in the case of illegal absence and we don't know where she is? No, you don't send it. If you don't know where she is, you don't send it to anybody. It's not appropriate to send it to the family. You send it to the Holy See for confirmation that you have declared. It's declared, so it's recognized by the church no matter where that. And you'd also want to send it to the Church of Baptism, where it is in her record that she is not free to marry because she's made perpetual profession. So you send it there. Now she petitions to get married in the church. She's free to marry.
Okay. The other question, it's a confirmation. So when we spoke about the time of exlustration, you said that if in the proper law it's 3 years, but now in the canon law it's 5. Does that mean that the sister can apply or recur to the canon, to the universal law?
It depends on how you want to address it within your own institute. If your proper law says 3 years, then you can hold to that and tell the member, according to your proper law, it's 3 years. And the sister knew that when she asked for exclustration. And if she wants to extend it, she can petition. If it's a situation where you think it would be a good exercise of this extension, then you yourself might ask to be dispensed from the limit that you have in your proper law. You, as a general administration, could make that request, but only if you find it useful.
I think there's always this emphasis in how life goes, what is important, what is useful, what is better, not just to apply the rule because the rule is
Just
there.
because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. As St. Paul says, everything it's convenient, everything is good, but not everything is convenient. So another question is, once one of the sisters that is in temporal profession has left, and if she asks to come back again, how could we go about it?
Okay, that's a whole other chapter. And Sister Sharon did touch on that a bit. There is a canon that provides if somebody has legitimately left the congregation after novitiate or after profession, if she had completed a valid novitiate, then she may be permitted to re-enter without repeating the novitiate. No one has a right to membership. She does not have the right to come back. She does not have the right to be dispensed from novitiate. It's again, taking into consideration why the person left. If she left because a family member, one of her parents fell ill and she went to care for the family member or to help take care of the children that were still at home, and it wasn't because of an issue of a call or a difficulty in religious life, but for some other reason, and this has since been resolved and she still feels the call and she has to come back, yes, you do need to have some period of time of reintegration and updating of her formation and helping her with discernment before being admitted to profession, but it's not necessarily a repetition of novitiate. You can dispense from the obligation of novitiate if she has completed a valid novitiate. If she left 6 months into novitiate, then she starts over if she's readmitted. If she made profession, temporary profession, how many years did she live in temporary vows before she left? Because remember, the maximum number of years in temporary vows is 9, and it does not say consecutive. So if she was 6 years temporary professed and she left, you've got to watch the calendar. And will she be ready to make perpetual profession after 3 years of temporary vows? Okay.
Thank you, Karen. I think
So-
even though this is not about how the council works, I think those are the questions that many times the councils have. Sorry, I think I didn't allow you to finish your sentence.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Because, can we do this? Yes. Yes, you can.
Okay. So I would like to know if a sister that has been dismissed from the congregation receives the decree of dismissal, and after 30 days she doesn't appeal, does that mean that she's accepting the dismissal?
The dismissal is effective upon notification. Instantly, she is dismissed as soon as you hand her the paper. But she has 30 days to appeal. So you don't have to wait and she stays home for 30 days. No, she's dismissed. And, you might give her a couple of days to pack. But then you make provision for her to go unless she declares that she is going to take recourse.
Okay, thank you. On the same canon, if the sister appeals the decision, so in this case it's her departure put on hold until the competent authority decides?
Mm-hmm. So she is to resume life as a member. If she's appealing, she's saying she wants to stay and live as a member.
Okay, so that's, yes.
So she needs to live the life and not give any further reason for dismissal.
Okay, and wait for the competent. Sorry, I just lost my window here. I think we touched this already, but I think the question comes up and I think it's important. So to be able to act according to canon law, does it have to be within our proper law? So again, the same case of these absence for 12 months. So again, I think it's the whole relationship between our own law and the universal law. How does that go?
Like I said, nobody will have that in their proper law because it wasn't a possibility. But now that it is, usually most people, because the process of dismissal is so detailed, that in our proper law, we say that in cases of dismissal, the universal law will be followed. If you have anything else, I don't know that you would have anything else because it's just, you'd fill too much of your constitutions with what to do. And that's not where we want to give our attention. We want to give our attention on those things of choosing life and holiness. Okay.
So there's a general question that I think it's interesting because it says with so many updatings and changings to the canon law lately, my question is, what can we do as YSG, or what would you tell us to more or less be updated? Some people are saying it's on the news, Vatican news, but we are not all canon lawyers. So how can we be updated with all these changes on a daily terms if we are not canon lawyers?
Yeah, it is a challenge because some of the news services, when they announce the changes, they don't give the text that was stated by the Pope, and they give an interpretation, which isn't always accurate. So it's to stay aware, always try to find what the exact text was. If it's touching on our consecrated life, you will have some recognition of what's going on. And if there's anything, as things change, things take time to implement. So I think part of the reality is recognizing that, all right, the Pope said it's 5 years instead of 3 years. Well, what are the implications of that for us? We have in our constitutions 3 years. What does that mean? So it's to find that point of contact. And in webinars such as this, providing the information that UISG does when there are relevant changes, they give us programming. Yay, UISG.
Probably we need to do a news on canon law every so often. I think I'm going to ask you one last question for this moment, then we have a break. And then after the break, I'll invite as well the sisters to ask questions live so that
and we can pick up some of the questions from yesterday.
Yes, okay. So about changing constitution. So we know that these changes need to be confirmed by the general chapters and then also sent to the dicastery or to the bishop, which responds after a long time, or call a special chapter. So in the meantime, we have to abide by sometimes laws that are not the ones we would like to live. So what is your comment on that reality?
Our proper law is meant to be part of the stability of our life. It is a harmonization between the spiritual and the juridical. It's those things that call us in our following of Christ, in our path to holiness, and how we do that together. What are the norms that we hold together to bring us all to holiness in carrying out and bringing forth this gift that we bear to the church and the people of God. So I'm not a big advocate of making frequent changes. I think oftentimes we don't need to make a change in what is written, but how we read it. Okay. So one of the examples when we were working on changing, updating our constitutions, we had a number that says every year we read our rule of life in it between Advent and Easter, because we were from a Western mentality, and this was, but for some people that's summer holidays. And so anyway, we took out between Advent and Easter, but every year we read our rule of life. Now sisters had in their head, we read the whole thing. So this number from our constitutions came up for change because those times that we had projects where we focused on a single chapter, on community life, on consecrated life, on apostolic life, on prayer life, those years that we had special projects were much more enriching than just reading governance every year, right? But the point in the rule didn't say every year we read our whole rule of life. It said we read our rule of life. We could take one number and use it as an invocation every single day at morning prayer, and we will have fulfilled the call of this number of our constitutions. So we don't need to change the number, we change how we read the number. Many congregations are restructuring, and so we don't have provinces anymore, we have areas or zones or units or whatever we want to call them. And so we need to change our whole chapter on governance, and everywhere we see province, we have to put in a new name. And we can't implement the change until we change the constitutions. Well, our constitutions don't say we only have provinces. It says when there is a province, this is what you do. So if you have this unit a new structure, it just doesn't follow what's said for a province. And you can decide, you have that authority, because it is for the Superior General, with the consent of her council, to apportion the congregation, to suppress or erect units, separations, and forms of the structures of the congregation. Now, some of you may have other structures that have that authority. It could be that it's for your extended general council to make changes in the structures of the congregation, or it could be your general chapter that has the authority to make changes in the structures. But if it doesn't say, universal law says it is for the competent superior to make the changes of how the congregation is apportioned. So you don't need to rewrite your whole constitutions. You have that authority to make those amendments. So the updating, yes, if it is a call to stimulate the life and holiness of your members, to re-immerse yourselves in the words, in the text, in this call of holiness that your constitutions offer, then by all means, take on the project for the life of the members. If it is spinning your wheels around governance, and how are we going to do this? Because it's not going to, it's never going to end. It's never going to be fixed just right. By the time you get it all approved, you're going to change your structures again. So how can you use what you have in a new way? Hopefully your documents are articulated in a broad enough sense that you have room to live. And in that way you can. But if you genuinely need to change your documents, involve your members. Your documents hold even if there's changes in the universal law, because it is an approved law within the church. So only do what is life-giving. If changing your chapter on governance and structures is just taking all the life out of you, do what you can to function within in a new reading of what you have. Because what does it say? What is the role of the superior? The role of the superior is the unity of the institute and the holiness of the sisters and the promotion of the charism. If we have made that job very different, then it's our mentality that must change, not what it says in our constitutions. Okay.
Kelly, thank you.
So,
I think, yeah.
I think, yeah.
You challenging our concept of law as well, how we read the law, how we want to apply, and actually canon law is there to give us rails to go, but not to tell us all the time what exactly we need to do. So we need to reinterpret the question of Jesus that says, how do you read it? It's very important. So I invite you to have 5-10 minutes. So we'll be back at 8 minutes past the hour, 10 minutes. So I invite you to rest, because these are important and heavy themes, as well to speak among yourselves if you are together. And we'll come back at 8 minutes past the hour. And I ask you, Kelly, to be reminded of the questions from yesterday. I have them here, but you've read them, so you have. And there's many questions coming up as well. And again, we'll invite the sisters also to ask questions live. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so we are back. We allowed as well our interpreters to rest a little bit. Thank you so much. So I will allow you, Kelly, to answer the questions that you received from yesterday, if that's all right. You are muted, so please.
Okay. Let's one of the simple questions, what's the difference between counselor and assistant? It's whatever you call the role. In canon law, the superior general is referred to as the supreme moderator. This is a term that nobody uses. So it's to say that we use the terms that are appropriate to us. So if we use the term counselor, or we use, I've seen assistant, that we have the assistant or the vice supreme moderator, the one who is to replace the supreme moderator if she is incapacitated. That's the assistant. But I have seen congregations where every single one of the counselors is referred to as assistant superior, superior general, or president, or sister servant, or whatever name we use. So when I refer to assistant, from my experience, it's the first counselor who is to replace the superior in her incapacity. But if you call all of your counselors assistant, that's fine too. Someone asked about, is there a compulsory number of counselors? No. No. And if they should always be an even number? No. Or an odd number? No. There is no universal law that regulates this. You decide what is appropriate for you. Whether you have an even number, an odd number, because of the obligation to have a council, you need enough people to actually give advice, but it can be proportional to your population. Some groups are reducing their number of counselors because they have fewer members. However, if your fewer members need more attention, you might need more counselors. So it is not in the universal law, it's not in canon law that that number is regulated. However, you want to do what's appropriate for you and within your capacity, and how you use the role is up to you. I have a thought. We used to put in our constitutions, there are X number of counselors. But now we're changing. If you haven't already made the change, you might want to look at in the future, if and when the need arises, to say, if you're going to make changes, then you're going to put, there will be at least X number of counselors. Congregations that are very, very, very small might have, there will be at least 2 counselors. You can't get consent, a vote of consent from one person. So at least 2 counselors. Preference is at least 3, so that you have the one who can replace and then 2 others. But you put in at least, and then who and when it is decided how many general councillors there will be. So some congregations will have 5 or 6 councillors, but their constitutions say at least 4. These congregations might say that the general chapter will discern, or upon the recommendation of the outgoing administration, the number of general councillors will be approved by the extended council. When you have the meeting with your provincial teams or the extended general council, okay? So it's how do you, there is no set number of councillors.
Kelly, on that note, sorry, some sisters are saying that sickle cell seems to be asking now for councillors because of the theme of expulsion, dismissal and renovation that you just mentioned. Do you know anything about
Yes.
it?
In the process of dismissal, you need at least 4 councillors. You must be at least 5 people to vote on dismissal. If you have 3 councillors, then you need to say how you will find the 4th person. So you add that in the event of a dismiss of the need for another councillor, it will be agreed upon by the group. The Superior General will appoint someone, a sister holy and knowledgeable former leader. You know, you decide how you want to define, but all you have to do is say how you will find that additional member for those cases. Okay. Regarding the role of the councillor, if our proper law does not say much, what do we do with this? It only has a couple of paragraphs. And it's true. It might say, you know, those who are to be elected general councillors will have the same age and years of profession required for the superior general, and how they're voted. But we really don't see any description of the job in that category titled general councillors. But as you go through governance or formation or apostolic life, or in those areas, anytime it says the superior general with her council or with the consent of her council, or you know, with the advice of her council, that brings forward the thinking on what the role is. Those are the obligations for councillors, but that is not the totality of it. So how do you understand the role in collaboration with the animation and the administration of the congregation? What are you doing? How do you see this role? There's nothing that says full-time councillors. Now, someone had asked about a council within a council. Sometimes we have some councillors that have outside work or ministry, and others who are full-time. How we use the role, there's nothing that says that can't happen. But how do you keep everyone informed? And especially as people are thinking of having councillors live at a distance and not all together, what are your expectations for this relationship? So you have 2 councillors who live outside of the generalate, and you have 2 councillors who live inside the generalate with the superior general. Well, the 2 that live in the house are probably going to be more up to date on things than the 2 that don't. Is that going to be a source of tension? Or how are you working on this? What are your expectations? What are your desires? What do you hope to achieve? is this something that will be fruitful for each of the members on the team and for the good of the institute? I can't tell you one is better than the other. What fits you best? Okay. In things like this, we can get ideas from what other congregations are doing, but we have to search within ourselves to what is it that we are called to live. We can look at others and see the creativity and the room that we have, but what is appropriate for us because of who we are, our internal culture of our congregation, and who we are today. Who are the people being called to this ministry? And what will bring out the best in them, which in turn will then be the best for the congregation. Da-da-da. Okay, I will go back to advice, consent, collegiality. Simple
Yes.
question. One question was, do you have something to add, Paula?
Yeah, that's exactly that, Kelly. Some sisters ask you again to explain the different votes, the consent, the is it the consent, then the advice, the collegiality. So if you can go over that
Yes.
again, please. Thank
And
you.
consensus, yeah. One question, simple. I mentioned secret votes. And some of you said, we don't do secret votes, or does it have to be? Does the law oblige secret vote? No. But in the general norms of canon law, so if you don't have something in your proper law that specifies, in situations of voting, a council member could, when it is a deliberative vote, a vote of consent, any councillor can ask that it be a secret ballot, unless it states otherwise in your constitutions. But if you're comfortable with a show of hands is fine. It's not a problem. You know, I need the consent of the council to approve the sale of a property in one of our areas. Because we've read the material, we've studied it. Does everybody, you know, we okay with this? Yeah. Okay.
Kelly, another question about the councils. It's the relationship of the councillors with the provincials and their canonical visits. So authority, who has more authority? What's the role of the councillor in a canonical visit? So I think that's very important as well, please.
Yeah, that is a good question. You recognize by the definition that we talked about extensively yesterday, 627, every superior has a council that she must use. There is no autonomous office of councillor apart from the superior. The role of the councillor is to advise and assist the superior. There is no canonical authority or power that comes with the role of councillor, unless you articulate. Now, the assistant or first councillor, the one who will replace in case of need, has the authority of a major superior to exercise in the case of need. The superior could delegate authority to councillors for specific tasks, but provincials are major superiors. General councillors are not. So if it is a case of the apostolic visitation that the superior delegates to one of her counselors to make the canonical visitation to this area. There's no authority in the visitation. She has the task to be present to and receive the sisters and listen to them, which she then transmits to the superior general. If there is a case where something needs to be exercised, the superior general could give specific authority in this case. But the local superior, the superior of that unit, by whatever name it is called, whether it is a province or something else, she has the immediate responsibility for the governance of this area of the congregation. So unless the General Councillor has been given a delegation that supersedes that of the area superior comes in first. So that's where, if General Councillors are living abroad but are not superiors, that relationship needs to be very clear, that they do not supersede the major superior of the area, unless that is your intent. But then you have two heads, and that won't be pretty. If the General Councillor is also the leader of that area, that is a possibility. But will she be overly taxed by administration that would hinder her regard for the whole congregation? Or is that something that you are seeing too? And are there some General Councillors who are in charge of areas and others that live at the generalate? And so then you have that two-tiered relationship. These gals know what's going on in the whole congregation, and these gals know what's going on in their area. It's not to say it's impossible, but how will you best serve your congregation? With your capacities, your gifts, and your vulnerabilities. We all have them. And so we seek to do the best we can.
As usual, always, but sometimes it's not easy. So on the same note, there's a very specific question on the relationship between the councillors, the congregational leadership team, and the provincial. The congregational leadership team only confirms decisions of the provincial council, for example, for admission to final profession. What happens if the congregational leadership does not agree?
Yes, this was a question from yesterday.
To the decision. Or the other way around, if the congregational leadership confirms the election or not of the provincial.
The key word in the interpretation of this one with the question is, the leadership team only confirms the decisions. No. That is not a good understanding. That's the understanding that says it's a rubber stamp.
Okay.
But that's not what it means. Canonically speaking, it means that this decision doesn't take effect until we agree to it. So if an area elects their leader, it's only effective if the general administration confirms the election. It could be sent back and say, no, we don't accept it. The same thing for profession. It's rather than using the dual terms of confirm or deny, it just says it confirms. Just like when we send a petition for dismissal, before we had to send a dismissal to the Holy See. It was confirmed, and then we would notify the person, the sister. But it could be denied. They could send it back and say, no, it's not complete. You didn't follow the steps. It's not confirmed. Start over. or here's what you need to do. Okay, the confirmation, the whole point of this is the unity of the institute. Okay, the two pieces. If there is an election at an intermediary level, then there needs to be confirmation at the superior level for the sake of unity of the institute, okay, that says that we are walking hand in hand. If there is appointment by the superior or the intermediary superior, it can only be done after suitable consultation of the members of that area. So that, you see, the superiors are making their decision based on the people that will be affected by the decision. If the people affected by the decision make the vote, it needs to be in communion with the whole of the congregation through the superiors at the general level. So it's not only confirms, it's that it happens in communion with, and only in communion with, the vision of the whole. And for profession, the superior general has the ultimate responsibility for formation and who becomes a member. Because once we accept someone to perpetual profession, she is ours forever. Okay? And if any of you have sent your members to the UISG formation for formators, they will tell you that I tell them, don't be nice, because we want to be nice. Another question that came up about acceptance: can the general administration or the superior accept somebody that nobody else supported? Can the general superior and the council say yes to the request of a member for perpetual vows, while the majority members of the congregation province disagree that the member be accepted? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Unless she's at year number 9, if it's not a good fit with that area of the congregation, if the general administration really likes her and wants to see her thrive, is there another part of the congregation where that might be best served? But look at the specific wording of your proper law. Does it say that the superior general, with the consent of her council, admit someone to perpetual vows upon the recommendation of the provincial? And if that's a upon the recommendation, if the provincial doesn't recommend her, you can't vote on it. It stops right there. And we call that subsidiarity. So, you know, we look over these things and we think we know what it says, but there's precision to it. And whenever you have a doubt, seek some advice. Ask a canonist who understands consecrated life. Ask your peers in other congregations. How do they understand this? Okay. Open your constitutions and look at them anew. Say, well, all right, what is this really saying? Okay. And we're always striving to do the best, which is, yes, absolutely. It might be wrong, but our intention was to do the right thing by how we read it. So don't panic. Nothing is irreparable, okay?
Kelly, thank you. There are many different themes. I'm just trying to go through them. One question is very interesting about people who have left and come back. What happens if the vows have expired already? So you said up to 9 years altogether, but then I guess I understand that. So if the person left and then when she comes back, the vows are not already valid, or the time has gone. That's why I seem to understand.
Now, I've not seen an authentic interpretation of that. It is my understanding and my canonical opinion that those years of temporary profession are cumulative. So if a sister made perpetual vows and then left for a number of years and comes back, how many years of temporary vows did she have before she made perpetual vows? So most people say, well, that was 10 years ago. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But we're assisting and walking with somebody in their discernment. And just like extending the time of exclaustration, prolonging isn't necessarily a healthy response. So whether is she finding her home back in community, you can do things with her before she comes back into temporary vows. You can have a probationary period that's not necessarily novitiate, but living in community before she goes back into the vowed commitment. If there's a concern. Now, if she had 9 years, made perpetual vows, and then 2 years later she left, and now 3 years later she wants to come back, discern well the motivations, the questions, the fruitfulness, the calls to holiness. What is it that is driving this person? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. On the same note, there's a very concrete question. We have received a request to join the congregation from a group of women, all former nuns from different institutes, who live in the community but currently have no vow ties. How do you think we can proceed?
So they're living as an association and they want to join as a group?
That's what it seems. They live in community among themselves, but they have no vows anymore because they left.
Right. There are congregations that were founded by former members that had all left and became an association. So that's a possibility. Why do they want to affiliate with your congregation? The steps for membership in the congregation for somebody who is not avowed religious is precise. You have pre-novitiate, novitiate, temporary vows, perpetuals. If they have left their institute, they cannot transfer. It is the process of initial formation that you have in your proper law. You can't dispense it because they were not previous members of your institute. If they wish to journey with you towards them becoming an institute, or if they wish, there's just too many what ifs in that. I can't answer that question.
That's very helpful because that's all the thinking that has to go on. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So in a case a province is in trouble, can the general government send a commission or send a person within the community? That's the question. I don't know if it's clear enough.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Because the ultimate responsibility is that of the general administration. Theirs is the oversight for the entire congregation. So if one of the units needs help or is going off on their own direction, It is the responsibility of the general administration to preserve the unity of the institute. And so if that means removing the leader or the council, or going and giving direction with the obligation of compliance, yeah, absolutely. Because your proper law was agreed to by everyone and is to be carried out by especially the leaders. So if you have an area of the congregation is not abiding by what their call to live is and the norms that apply to the whole congregation, then it is the obligation of the general administration to do their best to bring about communion. I'd like to touch on a few questions about some people have in their proper law that the Superior General is a member of the council.
Okay.
But how, I have seen it, but it creates confusion. When we submit something to the General Council, we know the Superior and the General Council, her councillors, because remember the canon law states that every superior has her council. So it's not that altogether this creates a unit. It is the superior with council. We elect people individually, not as a group, usually, because there are exceptions. So how is it worded in your proper law for votes to happen? Does it say, for particular cases, the superior with the consent of the council? Does it say or the deliberative vote of her council? Of her council, do you see? She's not voting. The superior with her council decides. That could be a collegial or a tie-breaking permission. But collegial really should explicitly be stated, because collegial voting says that everyone at the table votes with equal voice, so that the superior could be in the minority, but is then obliged to carry out the decision that was made. Okay, think of if you have civil corporations or boards. Okay, each civil entity has a president and vice president and treasurer and secretary. You have officers, but the decisions are made by the president. And that dynamic is helpful when it reflects the reality of our structures. How we arrive at our decisions is not necessarily hierarchical, but the nature of our structure is a hierarchy. How we function with communion and subsidiarity and synodality and all of these wonderful ecclesial terms, we model what the church is striving for. But there needs, as was stated yesterday, there needs to be a superior with personal authority, but she also is bound by using her counsel. So I cannot give general answers in this context, because it always depends on what your proper law says and how you understand it, how you've been living it. Yeah.
So changing a little bit the theme, some questions come on who receives the vows. If a provincial is present, if a general is present, so who at the end of the day is the person assigned to receive the vows of a new member?
Usually, unless your proper law says otherwise, the vows are received by the Superior General or her delegate, which could be anybody. Could be the provincial, it could be the local superior, it could be one of the general councillors or her delegate, unless your proper law says otherwise.
Okay, there's two questions that touch the same issue. If a sister, perpetual vowed sister, that has been out of a congregation for more than 10 years and requests a transfer to another congregation, how should we proceed?
It's not a transfer. Anytime anybody has left, their vows are done, and it is not a transfer. A transfer is for a perpetually professed member, current member of an institute. That is the only person eligible for a transfer. Anyone who has left their institute would start over. If they want to come into our institute, it is from novitiate.
Okay. We have someone who has raised her hand. Rita, if you'd like to unmute, please. And we can see you as well. Thank you.
Buongiorno a tutti, grazie.
Buongiorno.
Sì,
Good
grazie.
morning, everyone. Good morning. Now, my question is, if a secular sister with perpetual vows, and she is secular, but she makes perpetual vows, and she asks to enter in a congregation such as ours, I know that canon law doesn't have specific provisions for the direct transfer between two institutes, as for from one congregation to another, but it states that the superior of the secular institutes makes a request to the dicastery to assess, together with the new congregation, the path to be followed, even based on the proper law of the receiving congregation. But if the superior of the secular institute doesn't want to act in any way, in this case, how can the receiving congregation behave in order not to leave the sister alone and outside of any institution?
Any legitimate transfer requires the permission of both superiors. Okay. So if the superior of the secular institute is not willing to give her permission, then the member is stuck and she has to choose between departing or remaining. If your journey with this person and you believe she has a call to your institute, or you would like to journey with her in that exploration, you may petition for direction from the Holy See. But you need to state clearly that your counterpart, the superior of the other of the secular institute, has not shown willingness to participate, and see what advice you get.
Thank you, Kelly. So there's another question on the functioning of the General Council. Can a councillor who repeats her time on the council be elected general?
What does your proper law say? it doesn't prohibit it, then it is permitted. Otherwise, you know. So, and yesterday, the question of somebody's been a general councillor forever and a day, can they remain? Unless you have a limit articulated in your proper law, the only requirement in the universal law is that the mandate is explicit. Even elections for life in some monasteries, in the Jesuits, we can elect a superior for life as long as they know about it before they accept to be elected. So as long as the mandate is precise. The other side of it is that the law invites us to not leave people in leadership too long. It's twofold in its reality, but the motivation was so that the sister herself does not lose hope. Because none of us entered to be in internal ministry. We came, especially in apostolic communities, for the apostolate, for the mission. And so we can lose hope, not touching the reality that we came for if we are in leadership for too long. It's not to say that we don't have very gifted women who are good leaders and inspirational, but the longer they're away from the day-to-day life of the majority of the members, the harder that integration is. But also, it's a mentality. And the point of mandates, of terms, is to promote circulation. The circulation, the blood flows, and it is healthier. But they're going to do it differently. You're darn right, they're going to do it differently. That's how we were founded, by somebody doing things differently. So it might not look like what I'm comfortable with as a leader, and oh, that could be scary. She's going to do things differently. But if she is called, and if she has the grace, it will open things up. It will look at our constitutions in a new way. It will invite us to listen to the church in a new way and the needs of the people of God. So it's this mentality of involving, of promoting and forming our women for leadership, and then calling it forth from them for a time, so that there is this continuous life flow within the Institute, in a renewal. And it's that expectation that people will take their turn. Because, you know, we can all be the sitting in the back row saying, oh, I wouldn't do it like that. That's not what I would have done. And no matter who the superior is, I'm going to disagree with them. But if I have the expectation that I might have to take my turn, I might learn a little compassion with the challenges that come in the ministry of internal governance. I don't want to go away without the questions that came about the unity of the council and that common vision. And when there are challenges, what do we do if we're stuck? One question that came yesterday was, is the Superior General's overall vision of the community the same as that of the council? Remember the definition. The Superior has her council. The councillors are there to support and advise the Superior. She is the one that has been elected to lead the Institute, and we are there to advise and to assist. If I'm always in disagreement with, maybe, you know, so in our synodal dynamic, we then discuss together, what is our vision? How do we seek to lead at this moment in time? How can we support the one who has been called to be the congregation leader as collaborators? And if there is a block, if it's not working, if there are some who are not capable, they might try and they try and they try, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't bring out the best of them. And so their work is being neglected. And so the work of the whole is being frustrated. If there are ways, facilitators, have someone come and facilitate your group. Do team building work to learn to understand one another, both language and culture, interculturality. The tools of interculturality are fantastic to help us, even if we're all from the same country. We were born in different houses. And so how do we communicate to understand what are our styles of working? Because again, we're always looking to bring forth the best in each other for the good of the Institute. So if there are incapacities or unwillingness, then you need to look seriously at, can this person remain? This is not an office of power. It is a position of service. Questions about, I saw one earlier, if the General Secretary and General Treasurer should be councillors. It's up to you. If they become councillors, then they become ex officio members of the General Chapter. If you have the personnel and the people formed for this apostolate, will they have the same terms as the superior? Will they be appointed members of the council? You decide. They can always advise whether they're on the council or not. There we go. What else? In 5 minutes.
There's
What else do we
so
have?
many questions. There's one that just came up, which is in the wake of what you said. If you think it's important to ask a councillor to leave the council, what would be the procedure? Is it possible to do it if she was elected at the chapter?
What does your proper law say?
I was expecting that one. And if the proper law doesn't say anything?
Oh, it's got to say something. Whether it is a vote of advice or consent of the other members of the council. Sometimes it will say at least half of the councillors must be in agreement. The same thing if there's a situation where the councillors believe that the Superior General needs to be removed. But understand well, new Superior means new council. So if you're removing the Superior General for reasons of health or stability or whatever the situation is, it's provided for in the universal law because there are cases. What is a serious cause? Dementia? Obstinance, lack of discretion for a councillor that continuously breaches confidentiality required by the office, has been spoken to, and just talks about, detracts from, debases the authority of the superior. That is not who we are. I mean, we are women of the gospel. Behave like
That is our attempt all the time. So just this last question, some sisters have said with this changing of times that now they're happening so much, what advices would you give to rethink the structures of governance? And also here the question is, and how long do we have, how can we practice before asking permission to the Holy See?
it depends on how much room you have in your proper law, in how you defined your structures. And so I can't tell you without looking what it says But because you have provinces and regions and missions defined in your proper law, unless it says everybody is a member of a province or everybody is a member of this particular structure, those structures are defined for you to use, but you don't have to use them. It's like those permissions that we talked about. I can ask permission, but then when the permission comes, I might not necessarily need it. So we can use the structure of province, region, mission, unit. But if we need to find another means, and we call it something else so that it is not bogged down by the structures that already exist, but we want to create something new. Unless there's anything in our proper law that says we can't do that, then we have that possibility of creativity. But again, it depends. Does your proper law say that the authority that can change the apportioning of the congregation, is it the Superior General with the consent of the council? Is it the extended General Council? Is it the General Chapter? Those are all details. So you're going to go back and read your chapters on governance like you've never read them before.
Kelly, thank you so much. It's time. I think there's many questions that still, or many themes that come and appear.
I made a copy of the chat so that I could look at the questions after and be aware of what are the questions that are surfacing in your ministry, that I can be of service.
Thank you. I will send your contact in an email after next week. I will send an email to everyone with the videos, with the evaluation form, which I really ask you to fill in, as well with suggestions for how we can continue. I'm aware that we also want to create a commission here at the ISG of consultation of canon law. So we are moving. We realize that this is such an important part of our consecrated life. As well as Kelly mentioned, we will have in April the next second session with Sister Sharon. So this is moving on. Thank you so much.
I apologize to the translators if I spoke too quickly.
I think you did well, Kelly. We also are grateful for the translators that have accompanied us today, Ambra, Sylvia and Christine, to the technical team. And thank you for all of you that have been present today and yesterday, and all the people also that will see the videos. Thank you so much. And please do read your proper law and try to really understand what it says and interpret, and ask God for the grace to assist you in your leadership service. Thank you so much for everyone, and please unmute yourselves and let's say goodbye. And Kelly, safe ongoing journey today.
Thank you. And thanks to Lumatino Wi-Fi.
Grazie.
Bye-bye.
Grazie.
Grazie, buon viaggio.
Grazie Kelly.
Grazie.
Buongiorno,
Happy birthday.
Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Happy Christmas.
Grazie.
Merci beaucoup. Bon voyage à ceux qui
Feliz Navidad a todos.
Una feliz Navidad.
Buon viaggio.
Buon viaggio. Grazie.
Ciao. Bonjour, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Au revoir.
Ciao.
Grazie, Sor Kelly.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, safe journey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.